I'm Diane Roth. I'm President and CEO of English. If I haven't met you, I hope to, and hope to spend some time with you. Today is a series of town hall meetings for staff with the primary focus on sharing back with you feedback that we received from the employee engagement survey that was done in December. The high-level themes that came out, kind of what we took from what the input was, and what next steps we're taking with those, okay? We also really want to go through the presentation portion kind of quickly so that there's more time for people to raise questions, add ideas, and share concerns, okay? So when we talk about this employee engagement survey, it really was for the whole organization. So there's information gathered from people, not just from English House. So we had responses from 286 employees of English. Again, the majority of employees are from English House, but the responses came from across the board. And that's about a 44% response. For surveys, that's pretty good. But we're going to continue to do these surveys, and Teresa will tell you more about that, and we hope to keep increasing that number. The survey, and again, Teresa will tell you about this, it was all as a process to gather input into our strategic planning process for the next 5 years for English. What we took out of it were really 5 key theme areas around mission and values, our culture, communications, leadership, and compensation of benefits. So we're going to try to tackle each one of those areas this evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight and giving up your time so you can be here. Really appreciate that. Just a couple observations that we had about participation in the survey that we wanted to share with you. The first is that people who took the survey said that they really appreciated the chance to fill it out and to be asked for their feedback, and that staff want more opportunities to give input into the process. So right out of the gate, we want to say that we're committed to having these employee engagement surveys regularly, and we're going to do them at least every 18 months. So the next one's probably going to be in May of 2020. That will be similar to what we did today, or what we did in December, but we also want to have more regular pulse survey feedback to find out how we're doing. Are we doing a good job? Have we implemented the things that you've asked for? And those will be more frequent. So we are committed to getting your feedback more regularly. The other thing is that we heard when people were taking the survey that they were concerned that it wasn't really anonymous. And there was some fear and some concerns around, was it really safe to be completely open and honest? If you gave a comment, was it going to go to a supervisor? Were there any concerns about repercussions? I just want to say that this was an anonymous survey. We didn't capture anyone's names. We actually involved a third-party organization who took all the data in. So English doesn't have access to the survey tool that we use to collect it. We don't have the raw data. So the company that we hired to do this shared those things with us. And we just want to know, we want you to know that we're honoring your anonymity. And going forward, our surveys are going to be anonymous that we have, but we also encourage you to give direct feedback today to your supervisors, to your teams as well. And as Diane said, we're in the process of developing what's called a strategic plan. Just by show of hands, has anybody heard of a strategic plan before? If you haven't, that's totally fine. All it means is that it's a roadmap for English's future. It's really, what's our vision for where we want to be in 5 years, and what are our goals and the kinds of activities that are going to get us there? What do we need to do to achieve that vision? So over here on the wall, there's a poster with a graphic. You might not be able to see all the words, but you might see that there's a list of 4 goal areas, and the 4th one at the bottom is bolded. It stands out a little bit. And that's collaboration and teamwork. So English is establishing 4 goals for the next 5 years. We'll talk to you about these in much greater detail later on this summer. But what we want you to hear today is that one of those goals is about collaboration and teamwork. And that has everything to do with all of you, with our staff. And we know that if our staff aren't feeling happy and engaged and supported to do their jobs and communicated with effectively, we're not going to be successful with all of the other work that we have to do. So today is really just a first step in letting you know that we recognize that, we heard what you say, and we're committed to incorporating your feedback into that plan and into some more immediate steps that we'll talk about today.
The first theme area that really stood out was about our mission and our values. And overall, people were responding that, yes, the mission speaks to me. That's why I'm here. And yet I'm not necessarily feeling it lived every day, right? So we have this disconnect between what we're aspiring for in our mission and how we're supposed to treat each other, and yet we're not living up to that day to day. And that comes up through relationships with our supervisors and our directors and all the way up to, senior management. But it's also about relationships with peers, with different departments, and with the people that we serve. So we've got a lot of work to do that's very relational. And that's going to take all of us to keep working on. I don't think we ever end that work, but we've got to have some new strategies for dealing with it because it's clearly very present for people that you're feeling like we're not doing so well. And through lots of different communication mechanisms, asking for your input about how to address that, but we're also going to be taking some steps ourselves in terms of both structure, but also trainings, and I think reinforcing, as we'll see in another slide, leadership competencies around this. Culture is so related to mission and values, and some of the feedback we were hearing about this is, when you walk down the hall and you don't feel like you're recognized or even greeted. That there's a breakdown there in terms of the kind of culture that we want in our work environments. That there's a lack of trust in the coworkers, and Cheryl will talk to this point about, where do you turn when you're really struggling? And the third part there is, we have an issue about call-outs, and Patty will talk about that. And that's very specific to the house. And it's both a symptom of issues as well as the cause of issues. So we try to get underneath some of that and kind of interrupt that vicious cycle that we're in with call-outs. So I'm going to give it to Cheryl.
So I'm going to focus a little bit on the second bullet, where employees don't trust their coworkers, or they feel that they don't can seek support from HR. So I do know that some of the feedback that's not posted here also said that staff were told not to go to HR or compliance to file complaints. And so if you had that experience, I want to apologize. And I want to say here that if you have complaints or you have issues, you can go to compliance and you can go to HR to seek us out to help support you. Some of what we talked about is staff not feeling safe as well. So compliance in HR has been working through several investigations and allegations. And guys, it's really about us being kind to one another, showing respect, and treating each other like human beings. There's a lot of complaints about disrespect, and so it's not just one floor, it's throughout the building. So we're going to be focusing on that, and including you guys. So we're not going to force you, we're not like volunteers as focus groups to kind of talk about how we develop teams, because if we're going to live up to our mission, we really have to be kind to one another. Harassment of any kind is not an option. It's a zero tolerance. And we're going to be having trainings on workplace violence. It's one of OSHA's required trainings for this year, in addition to active shooter. So we hear a lot about that. We have to have it done by the end of September. So stay tuned for that.
Hi everyone. There have been frequent call-outs in the house across all shifts, and I want you to know that we know how difficult it is to work when there are call-outs. And it not only affects you, but also your team members, the residents, and the work environment. We'll be working with you on determining some of the root causes of the call-outs and coming up with ways in which we can prevent call-outs. Justin, Tamika, and I will be conducting staff meetings around the clock on a monthly basis with all departments. And also, in addition to the staff meetings, we'll be having leadership meetings twice monthly. And again, that'll be around the clock and again on all shifts. Because we want to hear from you, we want your input into what is the root cause of these call-outs and helping us come up with a plan. We look forward to working with you in developing a more collaborative approach that fosters teamwork. And again, it affects everyone. Thank you.
Just underscoring that, call-outs, as I said, are a symptom. We need to understand why people are feeling the need to call out. We think it's connected to stress. We think it's that's what I mean by the vicious cycle, is that if you're pulling a lot of shifts, if you don't feel supported on your shifts, it's hard to get here, But then that means that someone else is getting the same pressure on them. And that's why this is such a critical issue for us. I'm going to turn it to Teresa to talk about communication challenges.
Hi again. So communications is another big theme in the survey, and there were a couple major things that stood out. And the first one is that communication is handled inconsistently. And the questions in the survey about communication were really, how do you feel about the ways that Inglis sends information? Is it effective? Is it frequent enough? Are you getting it from the right sources? Do you feel like you have what you need to know? And the data was really inconsistent. So some people said they do, some people said they don't. Well, really what stood out is that inconsistency happens when it gets beyond the manager or the director level. And so for those who are providing direct care to individuals, you may not get that information timely or from your supervisor or in the way that's most useful. The other thing that we heard is that when Inglis does large town halls like this or large communications, that oftentimes it's around bad news, when something goes wrong, and it's gathering everybody together to talk about a challenge that we've had or a situation that doesn't feel good. And so that's something else that we need to change right away. And we need to be communicating regularly with each other about challenges, successes, shout-outs, and ideas, and just having more of a dialogue. So this town hall is the first one of many that we're going to offer. We're going to start doing these about 3 to 4 times a year. And there's a little card on your chair. This is a little survey. It would be really great if you could take a minute or two at the end of the session and fill this out, because we don't want to miss the mark on these town halls. I heard earlier that this time might not be a great time for the evening shift. So we need to know that. We can have it whatever time works. So if you could tell us, give us some feedback around the time, the duration, snacks, the content you want to hear, we can adjust to that. And there's also a spot on the back just for questions and ideas, concerns. So I can assure you that the entire senior team is going to read all of these comments. We're compiling them. And our next town hall is going to be probably in August. So we're committed to addressing these changes then. So if the time isn't right, we're going to change it. If you want to hear different stuff, we're going to build that in. The other thing is that we know that we need different ways of communicating, because many people are not sitting in front of a computer. You have really busy schedules, and we need to find effective ways of making sure that you get the information that you need from the right sources. So we know it's really frustrating when you don't get the information that you need to do your job, or about the people that you're supporting, or about your neighborhood. So we have some ideas about how we can do that better. Some of those ideas include text messages, signs that are going to be in the locations of the neighborhoods, digital signs using monitors. The idea of revamping the intranet came up today. That's something we're considering. Having more regular suggestion box, electronic or otherwise, just to give regular feedback. But this is another area where we really need you to help weigh in and give us some sense of what's going to work for you. So that's on how are we sending information across the whole organization, but there's a lot of work to be done, as Diane alluded already, on our face-to-face communication and the communication from supervisors to their teams. So that's something as a senior leadership team that we really need to be accountable to, and to make sure that we're sharing information with our teams regularly, that we're committed to sharing what we know when we know it.